Shalom Rastafari, Assalamu alaikum, peace to the kings and the queens of the earth. How's everybody doing in the beginning of this week? A lot of things are going on, so I definitely will be addressing a lot of things this week. I might even do some blogs tomorrow, especially, and Wednesday, instead of doing them every other day. Today, I wanted to talk about the beginning of this week is cannabis community segregation, and it's a subject that I have always wanted to talk about. I've talked about it previously in my blogs last year. I've pointed out, I put work in to certain communities to try to diversify our situation in the cannabis industry. And so today I'll talk about what we need to do, how it's still being segregated, and how we're basically still need a lot of work to do. So the motivation to do this situation is literally about all cannabis, right? I mean, honestly, when I touched cannabis about 2009, it was just more of a different type of situation as far as how I felt spiritually and mentally about the plant. You're just trying to get high, so you're mixing it with everything. It's harmless, yeah. And then finally you get to a point a couple of years later where you just really want to research it and heal properly. And also try your best to make sure you're not, just smoking nasty stuff. Your knowledge just gets better, and you understand what's best for you when it comes to this cannabis plant. Excuse me. Some people just don't even do it at all, right? They don't even have really a smoking motivation, and I understand that. And it's not for everybody, to be honest with you. CBD tinctures and all that things could be, just as good for you as smoking or inhaling it. So when we came up, though, as far as cannabis, there are so many people, especially of color, who are behind bars still to this day, who got thrown away for minor, cannabis offenses. And it's not just black people. There's a lot of people, but there's more black people than anything. There is one point where you can drive around, you get caught with a nickel bag, you're going to jail. And finally, New York, the only reason why they kind of understood that this policy might be, too much is the fact that you're spending more money housing and putting these people in jail and charging them than the actual value of what they had, right? For $5, you're going to spend $5,000 worth of tax money on this guy just to charge him for like 2 weeks of, whatever. So it made no sense. So the first thing, places in my area as far as New York, they decriminalized it. And so they made specific policies, but that did not change some of the things that has happened for people who decided to, involve in cannabis or even heal themselves or sell it. It literally put them behind the 8 ball as far as, trying to ever hold the fort down to maybe go into the legal market. Now, of course, we've had many states now go into either a medical or a recreational situation. Of course, in Canada, they have moved it to be federally legal, but in provinces, it's still funny. They can still overrule, do certain things. I know in Quebec right now, they're still fighting the grow laws for whatever fucking reason. That's really weird to me. And but Ontario is pretty wide open. It's legal. There's dispensaries everywhere. You can get your grow license, or you can grow 4 plants per household legally. Now, in essence, how can someone of color get into the legal business? Well, me being up in Canada for a while and literally sitting there and understanding the whole playing field and how it was and who really wanted to get in cannabis, for one, it took a lot of more unity than there was displayed, especially in the black community. When I came up here, the one thing I wanted to do was, one, establish a community, establish a program, and establish maybe even a firm of a people that when we show up, and we are here, and we are the people that need to be, addressed and part of this table. Well, when you knew who wanted to be part of the table, there's only a few who were willing to put the work in to be at the table. Everybody else just wanted to follow up and see who else wanted to do it. So, like, literally, there was things that had to happen that I don't think people were willing to put the work in. So certain communities, it just depends on who's around and who's willing to get into this cannabis situation. Now, when you go down south, it's a much different. Talking to people from like Oklahoma and all black communities, as far as all black cannabis, or a whole all black place where you work. There are more places like that in the States because it took legal situations and it took a team of people who just said, let's do this, enough's enough, right? And I feel that in Canada, it's just not at all a unified front. I remember being, I'm not going to call this person's name out, but one of the legal companies that it's only one that I know of, and that at the time that was actually one. There's only one that said we sat there and tried to establish a dispensary, and they literally got to the point where it was just like an all black female dispensary, and it was really, me being there, and it just felt kind of just super corporate. It didn't have any kind of black feel whatsoever, and no offense to the person, but meeting them, they really had no motivation to have any kind of like black anything. I remember we had a little party, they put us in the back, and they just, yeah, it was just really weird. It was very weird. It wasn't really supportive at all. And then years down the line, things happen, and the unified front is just not there. There is no black cannabis community in Canada or Ontario, what the hell soever. It's just everyone's separate, and it's just little pods of people doing their thing. When you get down to the States, again, there's black cannabis magazines. There's different type of fucking eras. There's even people who are fighting and trying to establish it. But it seems to me that we are also still behind the eight ball when it comes down to it, because that's how it usually is. And that's why the black contingent is very strong and has to be very strong in every element, not just racial issues, not just civil rights, not just human rights, but also in the cannabis realm. So at the end of the day, it needs to be established that diversity is one of the forefronts and has to be a main thing in this situation. That's one. And number two, being in a industry like this where most of us do smoke, most of us are in jail for it, why not have that influence of a all black cannabis type of situation? Not just saying it's segregated, not but saying whatever, but it's also something that the reason why I like to have it is because it gives the younger generation a little bit of motivation. Like, like a person who was smoking, young cat smoking at 17, 18 years old, if he doesn't see any kind of black ownership, he's not going to really think that it's possible for him or her to get to that level, right? If they don't see any black growers or black people who own dispensaries or having their own programs or having their own companies, they're not going to really think that it's possible for them, especially coming out of the urban setting or any kind of urban neighborhood. At first, I literally have talked to people who, they would love to establish a grow and try to get their licensing. But, sometimes it takes about a year or two for you should be growing for a year or 2 years to have your facility to then get your, your paperwork and to able to distribute legally to the OCS or any kind of other place. They do not feel that that's really possible if they don't see it, right? So it's one of those things that I have and always in the forefront of my head. It's a passion of mine to continue to establish things. I do have a little small program that I'm going to relaunch called the Buffalo Soldier Rastafari Coalition, BSRC. So stay tuned for that. And I'm just going to literally link up with people who are really into just trying to get us back on a level playing field when it comes to cannabis ownership. I don't think there's enough of us that are involved. We are, again, probably another consumer that is not also taken back and getting into the ownership part of it, right? And I think that's definitely needs to be established. Shout out to the people, though. There are definitely some all-black contingents out there. There's a lot of them, actually, and they have to also play the corporate game. So there's a lot of levels to this stuff, and I just wanted to bring it out that we need more cannabis ownership diversity. And that's not just for blacks, it's just for everybody in color. I'm seeing, shout out to those people who are, inspired in Canada, opening up indigenous-only grown cannabis places, claiming sovereign land not on territory, but off territory also. So big salute to that. And, I don't see really anything in as far as in Ontario, but when I go to the States and when I'm looking around, I'm seeing some established things, companies like Viola, or that's just one of them, that are really the black cannabis forefront and having, amazing parties and being involved in the community. I love seeing that. And we need to continue to go through that and push. And then again, that new generation, when they see the ownership and they see that, like, hey, man, if Coach Teresa can own something or this guy can own something, why can't I? That's the main part about it, to get that next generation to know that, hey, this is a legal corporation. There's money to be made here, and we need to get involved also instead of just consuming and buying. We need to own stuff also. Much love to y'all. That was a short one for Monday. Sorry for the background noise. I got some ignorant neighbors downstairs and upstairs. So I'll be handling that when I get off this podcast. But thank y'all very much. And look forward to talking to y'all soon. I'm definitely going to go to another podcast very soon about some other issues. And I'll get into them tomorrow. Love y'all. One love.